Greetings. This is Professor Jahsun of Osman Jose Mestre Toro. I'm working for William Grant Still Center, and this week is African Martial Arts Week 7. This week, I want to talk about the traditions of Palo Mayombe, Candomble, and Santeria, Orisha tradition. And I want to talk about them more from a perspective of connectivity, how they are connected as opposed to how they're divided. We all know that these various spiritual systems come from various areas. We look at Palo Mayombe, and it's a tradition primarily of Congo origin, but it arrives in Cuba. We look at Candomble of primarily Yoruba Fan, Ewe, Dahomean origin, but it begins itself in Brazil. We see Santeria as an African, or Lukumi, excuse me, as an African tradition, primarily of the Yoruba tradition and Fan tradition, but we see it originating itself in Cuba. All of these traditions also have, I would say, martial systems that can loosely be associated with them. And these systems also have their origins in the continent of Africa. And also, they are connected in the way that African people are recreating Africa wherever they get put, wherever we find ourselves. As we see in the book by Marimba Ani, Let the Circle Be Unbroken, African people are creating or recreating Africa wherever we get put, wherever we are taken to. And in this idea, what that looks like is we're maintaining our spiritual system, maintaining our culture, maintaining our idea, even our language, because even the English or the Spanish or the Portuguese that one might speak in various areas, that language, the English that African Americans speak, is different from the quote unquote kings or queens English, because that language has African syntax. It has Yoruba syntax. It has Congo syntax, and even some words are completely borrowed from the language. When we look at Africans in Brazil, even the Portuguese that they speak is different from the Portuguese that is the Queen's or King's Portuguese. And in some of that Portuguese is African language continued over. And the same for Santeria and Cuba. Africans there, they speak, the Spanish that they speak is somewhat different. And people try to belittle our African retention by calling it Ebonics in a negative sense, or saying it is slang. But the reality in many cases is that the language many individuals, many African people speak is actually a retention of their African language. That is, it's almost a genetic trait. So let me go back to the spiritual systems. So when we look at Palo Mayombe in Cuba, a martial system and a martial dance system associated with it is a martial arts style known as Mani. When we look at Candomble in Brazil, we can see that that style is very much closely related to Capoeira, Maculele. When we look at Santeria, and Santeria is also connected, in my opinion, with Mani in Cuba. When we look at African people in the United States of America and analyze Voodoo, the martial system that we can see that's very much connected is styles like trip and flip, kicking and knocking. And when we talk about what's going on in the United States or what happened here, we can't discuss these martial systems out in the world and spiritual systems without identifying and recognizing what happened here in the United States in the form of hoodoo, in the form of the history of Denmark Vesey, the history of Nat Turner, and another individual that's so very important here in terms of our understanding in the US is the history of Gullah Jack. We've got to begin to analyze these names. And this is merely an introduction. So as I mentioned names, as I mentioned systems, as I mentioned various spiritual themes, I want you to go out and locate and investigate. All it takes is to get on your phone, go on the computer, type in Gullah Jack, type in hoodoo, type in Palo Mayombe. And what I want you to do is take this understanding of it that we're talking about here and decolonize, because what we'll see oftentimes on the internet will be something quite different from the truth. So this week, we're going to focus on the movement of Rasteira, Martelo-Chapa. So this Rasteira that we'll deal with this week is going to be slightly different from the Rasteira that we dealt with last week. This Rasteira is going to be more like a troca chiguada, or changing of the guard, and then into Martelo-Chapa. So I thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you next week. We're about to do the movement called Rasteira e Martelo-Chapa. So the Rasteira here is going to be modified, you see, and then it goes into the Martelo-Chapa. So this would be more like a troca, change of guard, into Martelo-Chapa. Same mechanics of Martelo-Chapa. Here's from the side. Rasteira, turn over Martelo-Chapa. So you change of guard into the Martelo and the Chapa. Once again, Rasteira, Martelo-Chapa. This is good when you are closing the gap, closing the distance between you and your opponent, or you and your enemy. Also, it can be used as a Rasteira even, and Martelo-Chapa as such. Obrigado.